but iReports is a branded social media that we use in reporting. So Haiti was a big issue, of course, for us again. Iran was a very big issue because people were able to get out reports that we weren't able to receive, that nobody was able to receive because the state had shut it down, and the state-run media was the only way of getting any news. So those are two big things. Just recently, the flooding in Tennessee, iReports had become a big issue. But that's kind of the big idea of CNN. For the purposes that you're all here, though, is how does it work politically? What stories are really moving politically on social media? And I'm going to be a little bit contrarian on that. And other than the Tea Party movement, which Jackie refers to, and she's absolutely right, is that social media is still very much in its infant stages. Stories are not exploding because of social media in a large part. People who use Twitter, who tweet a lot, like myself, are talking to a very closed audience. And, we're talking to ourselves is what we're doing. We're promoting stories amongst ourselves, amongst our peers, and people who are really hardcore political junkies, let's say. Facebook, on the other hand, tends to be broader. There are 400 million people who use Facebook, so I think all four of us use social media to promote our stories in many ways, to try to drive traffic back to our websites and try to get buzz and what have you. But Twitter is, again, what I find to be a very enclosed network. Facebook tends to be a little bit bigger, more people are on it. I don't think we really know what the impact is on social media stories politically now. Again, you can talk about it in a grander scheme of things. Even the Virginia Tech massacre, that's when, for us, iReport went on the map, but that's on a political story. That's because we were able to get an image, a very sharp image, a very gripping image, a very telling image, very quickly. But again, it's not a political story. So while social media is extremely important, I think we're all trying to figure out how to use it and how to embrace it. The one thing I will say, in this very long answer, is that what it has allowed us to do is that it has allowed us as a network, and I think as a medium, to get instant feedback from our stories and to get people commenting and telling us whether they like it or not about what we're doing. Again, though, you're talking about a very closed audience, so if you put it on Twitter, let's say, and you're getting all this response from Twitter, you're only getting it from a subset of the nation who decides that they want to tweet, so to speak. There's nothing scientific about it, and it's not a slice of the American electorate out there about how a story's going to move or not move. So,
I certainly think it's a very important thing, but I also probably agree with a little bit of what Mark said and Jackie said, that we're not quite sure how big of a deal it is, especially I think for reporters. For instance, when you think about social media, comments on blogs I think would count as social media. And to be totally honest, I almost uniformly ignore them because they're almost entirely reactionary, partisan, always negative no matter what it is you're saying. You can be conservative, liberal, doesn't matter. And it's gotten to a point where it's almost too much that I think most reporters aren't really reading the comments on those stories. And you add to that the fact that most news organizations are making their reporters so transparent now that putting out their emails that I think readers can who actually do want to get in touch with you can, so you actually have a more genuine communication channel. But I think the reality is that for reporters using social media, I think that Twitter is sort of winning the day. I personally don't care about Facebook at all. I hate having to log on to it. It's just become unwieldy. Twitter is great for a number of reasons I think we'll get into tonight. But I think that Mark's right, that for political journalists, because you can obviously elect who you follow, you can elect who you read, to a certain extent it's very useful that way. You can choose, I want to follow the top 500 reporters in DC. But it also reinforces sort of the bubble mentality, like you're only listening to those 500 reporters. It's also very hard to suss out the kind of response you get. So let's say Mark were to get a reply that something was happening in Iran. I mean, Mark still needs to go through the basic old media journalism practices to confirm find out who that person is, double check that it's true. So, I mean, it's certainly one more added layer, I think, to the journalism that we do. But a lot of old media principles apply. You still need to fact check this stuff. There's still a huge risk for error. And the fact of the matter is that I think that journalists are so busy right now that you know, it's both unwieldy and a lot of times unreliable and unproductive to sift through the 300 comments you get in a story, or to sift through all the replies you get on Twitter. I would
disagree with this in terms of how you see Huffington Post, but one of the things that is unique about our approach is, I think, a theme that everyone's touching on is about there's a conversation going on, right? A conversation that has inputs that come from direct media outlets, that come from our reporting. There's a conversation that could be a closed community, but it's a type of conversation. It's a content bucket of tweets. There are communities out there on Facebook. There's people posting things on YouTube. And the problem with it is that because the technology is so accessible, the barriers to entry for someone to become a content creator are none anymore. There's a lot of stuff. And for Huffington Post, I think our approach to this is saying, you know, regardless if it's our original reporting, regardless of if it's an aggregated piece of content, regardless if it's a set of tweets from a politician, it's still content that we will determine whether or not it's important to carry the conversation further. And I think, and I don't know if that's the right bet to play on, but I think that's something that has been our secret sauce in terms of saying that there's a humility to all this type of content, and it's not just us filing a story, but it's us checking whether that's a story reporter's filing, or it's a form of citizen journalism, or it's a form of tweets that we need to curate, that we're going to put that together and then curate that in terms of larger conversation. And I think that influence how you gather or package or file a story.
Wow, that was a lot.
Multiple parts.
Multiple parts. Okay. So I think the overarching is how has it really affected our day-to-day jobs? And yeah, I'll be honest. Some days, yeah, it affects it a lot. Other days, not really. There are days I don't look at Twitter, frankly. There are days I don't look at my Facebook page. It does affect what I read. If something is posted on Facebook or is posted on Twitter, I am more likely to click on a link that's there because it's easy. I'm too busy to, go around and go to every single site that I'd really like to read. So if something's brought to my attention, that's something I'll read. So I mean, I guess as far as the information that is coming in, that's definitely something. And it's at times Twitter can just be one more thing to look at. It's one more thing that you kind of have to do, but it's not at the point where it's essential. It's not, when you go through the phone calls that you make on a Monday to the people that will tell you what's going on in my case, in the House of Representatives that week. It's not that essential yet. Is it a good supplement? Absolutely, but at least for my job, it's not. I'm not at a point where social media is how I'm primarily getting my information.
I think Jackie's right. It doesn't affect what stories I cover. It doesn't affect sourcing. You do not develop sources, certainly in this town, over Twitter or over Facebook. You develop sources over a cup of coffee. Trust is built, among people that you can see face to face. And again, all of them. Yeah, you know what I find Twitter interesting for is in the morning I use it as a wire service per se. I'll wake up in the morning and I'll just lie in bed perhaps, and hopefully my kids haven't made it in there yet, and I'll zip through and see, what are the stories that are being posted by their organizations? What are the stories being posted by the Boston Globe or the Des Moines Register, what have you? Because it's very succinct. I've chosen to follow them, so I can kind of get an idea, in addition to all the emails that our publications put out to try to draw eyeballs to our website. So.